Data Storytellers, we're here again. I think now this is an annual kind of habit, an annual custom that we have Jodi Blomberg on the show during the summer. So we had one, I think, in 2023, we had one in 2024, and now it's 2025. And we're catching Jodi in a very exciting stage of both her career, but I think out there in the data and analytics and AI landscape, some big shifts happened over the past years. And there's a lot to talk about. So, Jodi, first of all, welcome back on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm just as nice in the winter, Lazo.
We haven't tried it yet, but I know that our summer episodes are always great. So, someone who likes what works. But jokes aside, so what changed since 2023 and 2024? I remember the previous episode that we were talking about was about Gen AI expectations. That's like 2024 summer. Right? Just kind of seeing, okay, that's great that we have so much energy going into this, and very cool that the business is open to innovation and experimentation with these new technologies, but just, some mild warnings, I think, in that episode, more like, let's just be smart about this and let's make good investments. And now in 2025, again, a lot happened, and now everyone is talking about AI strategies in their businesses, and deployments show different results. Kind of people are looking for the structures, the frameworks, the playbooks. What's actually good that leaders should follow. It's a little bit, again, it's a little bit the Wild West. So how do you see the landscape today?
I mean, agents have exploded the landscape, I feel like, right? Everyone's really excited about those. And we're being what our CPO calls pragmatically aggressive. So we launched an AI accelerator in January, and pretty quickly we're inundated with use cases. And a bunch of them, frankly, weren't agentic AI, and some weren't even LLMs. Some were just ML. But neither here nor there. We were there to accelerate. So we have put out, we have pilots right now with 3 agentic solutions actually in pilot, and we're for internal use cases, so we can more aggressively go after our externalized cases and learn our lessons. And what we mean about pragmatically aggressive is there's just a lot of unknowns on how to deploy an agentic solution, how to build one cost effectively, from latency, cost, controlling for hallucinations. So we're trying to build up some scaffolding. So we have some, we're not just total no man's land, but the only way to turn those unknowns into knowns is to go do it. So we're doing it.
And I just had a great conversation with Elena from TE Connectivity. She's the chief data officer there. And I don't know if you know Elena. She's been around the block. She was like the group chief data officer at Danone, and then before Nestle and Johnson & Johnson. And back in like early 2000s, she was leading the digital transformation of the Wall Street Journal. Right? So that's, and she kind of said that, interestingly enough, this whole AI revolution, AI transformation is more like the digital transformation than the data transformation narrative that we had. Yeah, right. So it's very interesting, because I remember when we were in the data analytics, data science is the sexiest profession of the 21st century stage, right? I remember Gartner came up with the 4-stage analytics maturity model, right? So I'm now kind of looking at the landscape for the new ones. Okay, what will be our AI maturity model, right? So we can kind of see that, okay, maybe the pinnacle of that in this era will be the agentic, solutions actually deployed at scale in the business, like generating concrete value across, key areas. I know it's kind of early to call, but now you are actually actively thinking through AI strategy. And as you think through an AI strategy, obviously it's good to have some maturity scale, but I see that people are just branding it themselves, because you can actually need to look at what you're doing in the business and to come up with that framework. So how do you see this AI maturity model today? Have you thought about it in that way?
We have thought about our maturity. I think of it in sort of 2 ways. one, any company today needs to get some AI maturity in just how they work as a company, right? Like, are your software engineers being more productive? Are you handing out Copilot to everybody, right? There's this transformation that happens internally. And then there's a transformation in what products you go to market in or how you revolutionize your business, right? Not just your day-to-day knowledge workers, but like, are you putting AI into your product that you sell or that you use? And we're sort of running at both of those. One of those is a whole company transformation and cannot be said enough how much change management that is. And so I think that's a level of maturity. And I think we talk a lot about how that's kind of table stakes now, right? Like, you can make your salespeople a lot more effective because they can pull like a really nice conversation piece on someone they're meeting with, but so can every other salesperson. It's not really a differentiator, it's table stakes. So you don't want to be behind, but you got to do it. On the business side and the go-to-market side, you're trying to think about how to differentiate, how to provide experiences for your customers that they can get nowhere else or take advantage of data only that you have. We're thinking a lot about what that means, right? What that data differentiation means and what to hold on to and what to give out. You already see a pretty wild change, I think, in sites run on ad revenue, for example, right? I think The Economist said 7 out of 10 Google searches, nobody's clicking on a link anymore. That really changes the whole SEO game too, right? And so I think about maturity, like I said, I think about the internal maturity, like an organization embracing AI from top to bottom. You don't need to live in a product org or an AI org to do that. And then really, what are you going to market with? Are you revolutionizing your business? Are you mature enough to understand what threatens you, where your opportunities lie? And do you have enough scaffolding to deliver it too, right? Like, this feels a lot to me like the early days before we had ML ops, when we had to come up with like new paradigms for releasing this thing that doesn't look quite like the other things we do, right? Agentic AI and LMs are sort of part machine learning, part software engineering, and we don't quite have frameworks yet, I think, on how to scale those effectively and safely, manage risk, monitor over time, observability, evaluation. And I think that's where, until we get a little bit of that scaffolding, it's going to be really hard to scale up. So would I be okay with deploying 3 different solutions 3 different ways this year? Sure. It's like, we got to figure out what we're doing, but that's not going to work a year from now, right? We're going to have to start thinking about like what we let people do and where and how, and cost control is going to be a real concern too. It's deceptively easy. An agentic solution with a lot of agents, and then if you have LM as a judge agents trying to make sure it's not hallucinating, now that doubled your tokens, right? It's deceptively easy to build a really expensive agentic solution that costs more than you can sell it for.
And so this is interesting because if we look at these different narratives about AI within an organization, right? So who owns it? And I mean, obviously, you have your own situation, and then other businesses are different. But who do you think should own the whole AI vision, AI strategy? Should it be owned by someone? It's
Boy, do I not know the answer to that question. I don't even know who owns. We're even grappling happily, I think, with like trying to figure out like what part of this is like part of a platform and what part feels more like ML ops and who should do that. Like, right now, what we're just trying to do is say we're forming teams of talented people with talents across that spectrum, and we're going to go do it. And then we'll figure out later how to organize it to scale, because it's too early, right? You're just, but in terms of who owns the AI strategy up here, I mean, I think it's the CEO, because you've got to drive the whole company transformation and you got to drive your product transformation. So you have a player everywhere. HR plays a part. Who's training all these people? Who's upskilling? Who's managing all your change management that AI is going to bring to your workplace? You've got product, right? They're trying to go to market. You've got like, nobody really gets out for free, in my mind. So not to put that all on the CEO, they surely rely on people within their org like me or the CDO or everyone. But at least we're approaching it, and I think that's the right way. Is like, this is a whole company problem or a whole company opportunity, really. And so that embracing of AI needs to come from more than just the tech people.
Yeah. And this is also why it seems that this is a little bit different from the quote unquote, again, these terms kind of flow into each other, but the data transformation, when we think about that, I think this whole AI buzz, it's a little bit like more like the digital transformation, also in the sense that having a digital strategy, right? It's such a wide term. Like every organization has to have a digital strategy, or if you don't have a digital strategy, well, that is still a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Towards something that just, well, that's how things are, right? And with AI, it's a little bit like that, because even if you don't have an AI strategy, well, your employees will still use AI, not necessarily with your, proprietary data, but they will still, in their lives, they will still be it's so ubiquitous now, right?
Yep.
So it seems like that also what you're saying is that, well, an AI strategy is owned by the CEO because it's actually just part of the business strategy, whether you have it articulated to a certain degree or not.
That's my view. It's like, you won't survive very long if you've got none. And it is different for different companies. Like, we are a company of many brands, and that ranges from software as a service kind of stuff to physical operations of things, or fixing trucks, or through our fleet services. And so our employee basis really could be, product, could be knowledge workers, could be mechanics. And so our strategy has to be kind of multi-tiered, depending on what your business is, though. You do need, I think a good strategy would say, for this kind of worker or for this kind of product, like, this is my expectation of what will transform. So it's going to transform really differently for someone in finance potentially than it's going to transform for what we go to market with in a product.
No, absolutely. And this actually brings in a question, because you guys are a good example of a certain organizational structure, with several different brands. But then when you have strategy, just like how we had with, in this case, the data strategy, the question of governance. So I'm throwing like these heavy questions right in the beginning. I'm front loading with the impossible questions. But with AI governance, right? So when we talked about data governance and data literacy, data fluency, now the same themes are emerging with AI. So how do you see this playing a role in figuring out what to do?
Actually, we have spent a lot of time talking about AI governance lately, and the most interesting piece of that is that all of us use the same word and we mean very different things.
Interesting.
So depending on who's talking about at the time, there's an AI governance strategy when you're in a giant company, at least, with multiple things about, like, oh, well, I probably need an agent registry. Like, I need to know where this stuff is. And I need to be a little bit thoughtful about how we compose them. Is there reusability there? Should we, you saw Walmart, I don't know, in the Wall Street Journal or something, just say they went from many agents back up to having super agents. That's a strategy. And that is a governance strategy about who built what and what you let proliferate. There's an AI governance strategy around security and safety and adopting data governance, right? Like, I don't let you build on an agent. It's got to inherit your data authorizations, for example. Or I need to do X, Y, and Z to avoid prompt hacking. So that's a form of AI governance too. And then there's this other part of AI governance, I guess is my pet favorite because it's what keeps me up at night, is the governance that feels more like the ML ops governance, which is how do we not lose our customers' trust, right? The thing about non-deterministic systems is that all of your regular software telemetry can tell you that everything's fine, just like ML models do this, right? Your logs are fine, code ran, there's no errors, but the answer is wrong. You have said the wrong thing, you have given the wrong prediction, and an agent has made up data when it didn't get it back from the API. And the observability and detection governing that behavior of the LLM to try to put a box as much as you can. I think it's very layered. I think AI governance is going to end up very layered. It's going to be everywhere from how's the LLM behaving to making sure you don't give agents too many tools in the MCP to, you're going to put control wherever you can. But that's a form of AI governance as well. And I think, unlike data governance and data literacy, AI governance is a giant group project. And that makes it harder. Right? Like, who owns that? Oh, maybe the CEO, because again, I need
the CEO has a lot on his shoulders.
So I need the CDO. I need, I need product involved. Like, I need legal. any supply chain. It's a really wide-ranging thing, AI governance. And we're trying to be, I think, pragmatic while being aggressive, meaning like we're not going to go forward with no controls at all. We don't want to break our customers' trust, but we are trying to be more pragmatic so that you don't, get to financial, like FINRA level regulation where you can't do anything. So we're still working through that idea that we can govern and set up some scaffolding, but still have, like my favorite metaphor, like still have highways, but high walls. You're in a highway, you can go as fast as you want. And we're really interested in building those speedways, but you gotta figure out what the walls look like on the sides first.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. And I'm glad that you mentioned the whole deterministic versus probabilistic or non-deterministic systems, right? I'm glad that you mentioned it because I've been trying to catch this on camera since I read one of your posts about it. And then I've been kind of mentioning this concept to people. So I'm glad that, the camera's rolling now while I get to ask the question. So can you just shine a light on this whole thing? Because I see this as one of the, if not the key, but an important piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure out how to navigate the narratives between people's expectations and why sometimes those expectations are not delivered on, or just in general, the big picture. And tell me if I'm off, but what I observe is that when we, let's say in the 80s, we talked about AI, right? Or even in the 90s, right? What we meant by 2025 language was AGI. Which, again, for most people, this would be like, what are you even talking about? This is, too technical to me. I don't know what AGI is. I don't care, right? But, okay, artificial general intelligence, which is more like human cognition in the sense that it can actually make independent decisions, and in novel situations, it can kind of, I'm going to butcher this, and I'm sure that there are, many, AI scientists who would say that, this is like oversimplifying the concept, but I'm trying to just kind of make it palatable for a wider audience here, that basically it can perform at a high level on multiple dimensions of ways of thinking and cognition. And a lot more than that, but let's just say this. Now, when in the 80s we said AI, that's what we had. An artificial intelligence would be a computer with those human-like features. Now, what we have today as AI, what the general public means by AI, what the average employee means by AI, is mainly a large language model, a generative AI solution. That's what they're familiar with. That has the wow factor that really shook things up and moved hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into just building on this revolutionary technology. But it's still a large language model, and as such, it is ultimately a guessing machine that is built to mimic human behavior and look like a human, feel like a human, sound like a human. That's basically what it's really good at, right? But it's not a human.
Human. Yeah, but not thinking, really.
Yeah, exactly. So can you shine a light on this? That why is this important? That we sometimes look at it with the expectations of a deterministic system, but it's a probabilistic system. And then does that mean that there will be like disappointments in terms of the returns from these technologies, or maybe even people have, again, their own assumptions and they can't even comprehend how useful this thing actually is? So
I mean, it is incredible. Okay, never need to write PowerPoint again. Thank you, perplexity.
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest risk, actually, I was sitting on a plane this week, and I happened to sit next to a professor of mathematics, which never happens to me. I'm usually not chatty on planes, but I kind of did want to talk to him. But he asked me what I was most scared about with AI, and I said that people believe it. And what I meant by that was humans make mistakes. AI makes mistakes. That's a feature, not a bug. There's no AI model that's 100% perfect. And to be fair, humans as well. But we do tend to forgive humans, and use human judgment to figure out what to do. And we often we're starting to expect that the AI is right all the time. And I do, that's my concern. So this is still a probability machine. It's not a world model, meaning it has no causal understanding. It does not understand when it's lying or hallucinating or not. It's putting probable sets of words together. There are, a lot of research going on in stopping it from hallucinating. Some of those are like more about, is it being true to your data? Still not the same as is it making things up? And the other thing it carries with it is human bias, just that we built into a lot of our systems. And so it's giving the most probabilistic answer, and that may carry certain things forward that aren't necessarily universally true. And probability is also a multiplication game. So if you have a probabilistic agent talking to another probabilistic agent, they're both 90% right together, they are less than 90%. The decimals multiplying, right? They're 80%, 81%. Correct, in theories of probability, and it could be more nuanced than that. But that's what I worry is as we get more and more of these systems and we build more complex, and people start believing the AI to be true, it's going to be wrong sometimes. And I think the more we prep ourselves for that, at least in our case, so if you're a company going to market, you probably want a pretty high confidence that you're putting a true answer out there. I think trust is everything. And we have, so far at least, seen human behavior act like when the AI screws up, they stop wanting to use it. And I think for companies, it's going to be important to figure out how to manage through that. Like, you don't really want to put a chatbot out there that makes up stuff because people will stop using it, right? I think we've all used a crappy chatbot and we literally never want to talk to that thing again. And usually that's because it wasn't useful, but now it might be less useful because it gave you the wrong answer, right? It said, oh, I will be out on Tuesday to fix that. Or, because the AI wanted to be helpful and there were no scheduling appointments. And now the person that the AI bot scheduled to come to your house isn't coming for that fix. We will lose people's trust. And so the good news is we've been managing probabilistic systems for quite some time in ML. And I think, same rules apply. We'll need super high observability. We'll need high evaluation. We'll have multiple sets of guardrails. And for really high risk stuff for now, human in the loop is really, right? We just don't let these things run without somebody looking at it.
And it's interesting, like a couple episodes earlier, we had Mikhail Davis on the show, who is right now the VP of Strategic Analytics at NBC Universal, but she was with Legendary Productions while 300 came out and worked with like data-driven solutions there. And we had some cool conversations, but just connected to that, the director of 300 and Justice League and Man of Steel, Zack Snyder. So he was asked about, how do you think that AI will transform the movie industry, right? Is it just going to be now AI producing movies? Are these, more and more independent agents? And actually his answer, it just made me, like, I was surprised because he just displayed a pretty good understanding of the actual technology. Ben Affleck had the same, by the way. One of the best explanations of AI and LLMs in terms of how they work in like a short period of time that anyone can understand, but actually was Ben Affleck of all.
Wow.
Like, he was the opposite of ignorant. He was like, whoa, he actually gets it. He actually understands the technology. He spent time understanding the technology. And Zack Snyder said that why he's not worried about, it's super useful. And, Zack Snyder was always super bullish on all kinds of digital solutions, always, like a cutting edge of applying technology in the craft of filmmaking. He said that obviously it's like hugely useful and you can do all kinds of things, but in terms of AI taking over and taking the reins of creative production, he said that that's just won't work because it's really good at reproducing what we know works. And he said that no one knows why actually building a movie works and what works. And that's like sometimes you have an amazing movie, and sometimes you just don't. Sometimes it just doesn't come together. So there's still that kind of, we don't even know what works well. So why I'm saying this is because a lot of people talk about how even the big four consultancies now, they are kind of in a crisis because no one will need strategic advisors anymore because you can just ask ChatGPT and the quality of the information is often better. Or the consultants bring you.
I do.
Okay, so what is your take on this? What is your take on this? Because it also reveals now that a lot of the value that we thought that certain products or services had, it wasn't just, let's say the information, but it was also the fact that it is coming from a human being or a collection of human beings with personalities and a history and trust. It's hard to trust a machine. We're just finding that out, right? We're just living through that whole notion. Before, we could have said, well, it's hard to trust AI systems, but we didn't even have AI systems where we believed that at least it looked like a human being and sounded. They didn't pass a Turing test. We just recently passed the Turing test. It's like a recent thing.
It is happening faster than any of us probably thought. Yeah, there's this whole, I don't think we're headed for model collapse exactly, but there's this idea that, right, LLMs are trained on, well, everything from Reddit to the New York Times, right, all the textual data, and that there isn't, at some point we'll run out of data to train the thing, and then we'll be using synthetic data, or we'll be training AI on its own output from before. And I think this idea of model collapse, or, we're just getting trained on itself. It gets dumber and dumber. The layman's version, I guess. I think that feels a little far-fetched, but I do wonder whether AI will innately get less creative. It's very creative for finding unique drug combinations and things, right? It's so powerful in those kind of spaces, but in terms of creative pursuits like writing and movies and things like that, at some point it's all going to get really boring, I think, right? Depending on itself. And since they're probability generators, it's going to keep putting out the most probable thing. And even if you turn the temperature up, and I don't know, kind of hoping for the resurgence of human creativity, because we'll be starved for something novel. And I think human nature actually craves novelty. And so maybe as these systems get more ubiquitous, I think humans still have plenty to offer. So.
This is a fascinating conversation so check this out. Because I've heard about this whole model collapse thing. And of course, this is also a narratively engaging thing, the model collapse as AI starts to eat its own synthetic data. That's basically junk food that will ultimately destroy it, and it will lead to a model collapse and needs that human novelty. Now, if you think about it biologically, what we understand what life is as a system in the universe, this actually checks out, because why the system of life is unique as far as we know it, right? A lot of people, a lot of the times we think that, life is this very fragile new thing in this Goldilocks zone on this, planet revolving around the sun. And it's just basically a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of the universal design, right? That's the assumption. But if you think about it, that the universe is 14.3 to 14.2 billion years old as far as we know, and life is 4 billion years. It's actually a very significant time during the age of the universe we actually had life. And actually only life produces novelty from all the systems we know. So if you think about galactic systems, right, and stars and all that, and how we understand different galaxies merging and collapsing, and planets rising and dying, as far as we know, that's just self-repeating, and life is the only thing that keeps coming up with innovations, right? so
we crave novelty. We hopefully will still crave critical thinking.
Yeah.
You already see studies where it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But yes, it can do a lot of coding for coders. But anyone who's coded knows that when you're kind of in the flow zone and you're that's awesome. And when you're coding with an AI editor, that is not the flow zone. It's kind of boring. It's be a little bit annoying. I don't know, we're just trying to make all our jobs things we hate. It'll be interesting to see maybe it will get better, or maybe that will play out, or maybe it will write so much code the job becomes different. And right now the job might be that the code assist saves you 5 minutes, but you can't get in the zone in 5 minutes, so you're just checking email or whatever. So I'm not sure how that plays out, but there's some human happiness and, like I said, novelty in there that I don't think we've yet. We just don't know the effect on humanity. I worry about it, but I guess I feel hopeful. Like I said, I feel like human nature wins.
And I agree with you. I'm also an optimist on that, but also I'm just fascinated by how because we're just living through it, we're just finding it out that, wait a second, even if you look at the favorite things that you like to read or the things that you like to watch, we actually have such a keen eye to human generated content, right? So if you want to make AI generated content look and feel like and read like human, you'll have to work on it a lot. You will have to, right? Because we're already like picking this out visually and just viscerally. So there's something about that novelty that human beings crave and recognize and seems to be uniquely human, right? And this does not take away from the fact that LLM still, like, it's still blowing my mind every single day as I work with it. I'm like, I'm telling my wife, it's like, I'm going to talk about these things and all that, but this is just amazing. Like, it's amazing what it can do, right? And also sometimes I'm like, shocks me that it failed on this particular thing, because a 3rd grader would have understood and seen it, right?
Yeah, it's clearly not human, right? On some level. It's fun.
It's a lot of fun. And okay, so just to kind of tie back into this, I wanted to just understand this whole, non-deterministic versus deterministic system distinction. Do you think, by the way, that how the human brain works and human cognition works, but as far as we understand it, because there's a lot that we don't know about it. Right. So even just mapping out the brain on a neurological level, we don't have a lot of it figured out. We have some guesses, right? So do you think that human beings think more in a deterministic way as opposed to a probabilistic way? Because LLMs, we know that they are strictly probabilistic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We act in emotional ways.
And what does that even mean, right?
Yeah, I think we are a combination of deterministic and probabilistic, right? We take bets. We play poker. Some things are determined, right? Your childhood, or the way you react to things, or how you're wired to be extroverted or introverted. And so that probably changes how you do things. But I think the biggest for me, and unfortunately we're going to get over this hurdle, but I think to get to AGI, I think I would agree with Helen Kuhn on this one. The one thing they lack is they're not world models, right? You see large vision models that don't understand gravity super well, or like, that's what I mean. It's like LMs don't understand. They can mimic emotion, but they're not having it, right? They don't understand it. And here's several LMs were built to be somewhat obsequious too. So, that still differentiates us, right? Some of the things that we know about the world, or the way we perceive human beings or perceive people, are never going to be known to AI, I don't think.
They can't have a perspective, right? Because every human being, regardless of the nature or quality of that perspective, which, how do we even measure that, right? As far as we know, it's all unique, right? But then a machine can't have a unique perspective. It does not have a perspective. It doesn't have an identity like a human being.
There are plenty of books and movies that suggest. Or read Antibot or something that's how they get sentient, but I'm a skeptic on that.
Exactly, right? Because as you said, many movies and stories do, but that is science fiction. And I don't even think that that's a derogative term. Oh, that's just science fiction. No, that's actually very interesting that we project that into a machine, right? That feels like a human.
Like, my biggest fear today is that a lot of people are capable of viewing, because the AI sounds so human-like, that we are capable of sort of perceiving that it has human-like capabilities. And yeah, maybe I'm just worried about my children. Like, who wants an AI friend when you could have a real one?
Yeah, exactly.
But I worry that more too about, like, we're going to make a lot of automated decisions with AI. And so we're going to make mistakes, and yes, human makes mistakes too, but it'll be an interesting to watch the world decide whether they trust humans or machines, somewhere along those spectrums, and where we automate and where we don't. I'm sure we'll do it wrong a bunch of times, but, like, I don't know. Do you want a pilot flying your plane, or do you want a machine? I actually don't know my own answer.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. Yeah. Good. Great point. And look, this is a lot of fun because we could talk about these things forever. But just to kind of roll it back onto the enterprise front to land the plane. So this final thing I wanted to ask you about is really about the organizational change and storytelling aspect of this, right? So I'm just going to ask a few quick questions so that you can give me your quick take on this. So first of all, how do you avoid snake oil, hype, or over-promising with stakeholders from vendors? Do you have a perspective on this? You go to a lot of conferences, right? So you see a lot. Do you have a view on this question at this point in time?
I do. So at this point, I love to talk to vendors because there are a lot of good ideas out there. And I love hearing, and every once in a while, I'm like, oh, you are doing a thing that like I'm super interested in. I do think there are a ton of people out selling AI on top of everything. And so I do tend to go in somewhat with a skeptical eye. I think the hardest decision for most companies today is like who builds what, right? Like we could build that agent system, Salesforce could build that agent system. Oh, this other company, everyone's got an agent or everyone's got a bot on top of their software product. And then you've got these new startups that have kind of like this sometimes more revolutionized ideas and sometimes less. And trying to figure out where to place your bets is really hard. I I don't think a lot of people are selling necessarily snake oil, like AI is real and you can put it on top of anything. And so to me, it just comes down to more of a question. Have you done that in a way that I think is highly valuable or not easily repeated by my own team? Like they could whip something up. But it is a strange space right now and it's very crowded. I would like to apologize to all the vendors. I can't even get through my email anymore with a polite no. I used to, but I've lost the plot.
A lot of us did, yeah.
Do it. That said, I do make space for at least probably one vendor presentation a week. Cause I mean, there's a lot to keep up on and I learn a lot by talking to them or they make me think about something in a different way. And, I think there's a lot of good ideas out there and obviously they won't all succeed, but to my impression so far is the ones that are going to succeed are like always the ones that have really figured out the business problem they're going to solve and really understand their user and aren't just like slapping AI on whatever thing of the day. There's too much AI out there and there's a lot that's not that good. And so figuring out what good looks like is probably the winners, right? But It is a weird time to be a vendor because I don't know. There's also like companies like Glean or Claude for Enterprise making anyone able to build some of what you're building if they have the data. So it's hard to know who's going to win here.
Yeah, and also like how this will play out economically, because a lot of these startups by nature, I mean, they need to incorporate AI. That's what will attract investment. Still, it won't just, you have to have that for those crazy returns and for those crazy scales that sometimes these companies sell. And then what will actually make it work or not is anyone's guess, because there are so many factors at play. But a lot of them are also operating at a loss because it's very energy intensive, a lot of what they offer. And then do you see some issues with that downstream, that a lot of organizations will adopt a bunch of these solutions and they will either become expensive or a lot of them will probably just stop being in existence? That will happen.
We were just talking about this week. Like, this is what we think about when we're going to build versus buy. So like I could pay the token cost to whoever, Anthropic or Bedrock or ChatGPT, or I could buy a vendor solution. Now I'm paying for the vendor solution, but they're paying for tokens. Presumably they're also passing that on to me. So like what's the tipping point? I know internally too, we worry like we want everyone to embrace AI. So we probably will candidly spend too many tokens trying to get adoption on some stuff. But at some point we're going to rate limit people because we also don't really want to pay. I mean, at some point the ROI has to work out, right? And you can easily spend too many. And the economics of this is, I think, just not worked out yet. We don't know if AI is going to get cheaper. We don't know. I mean, we can't build data centers. There won't be enough water and power probably. So is the answer going to be smaller fine-tuned models that just run natively on your phone? Is it going to be, or your laptop, rather than making a call out with tokens? Is it going to be something else? Is it just going to get cheaper? Are they going to figure out how to run them more efficiently? Like, I don't know if we know the answers. I'd probably be placing my bets in all those baskets because I think there's this expectation in people's heads that this will be like computer chips where they got smaller and cheaper over time. And everyone thinks AI will get smaller and cheaper over time. And that's sort of true, but like something would have to shift in water and power usage to make that true that I can't get my arms around as of yet. And so I believe there has to be some space for these smaller fine-tuned models for specific tasks that would be extraordinarily less energy intensive. has a place. That's my best prediction, but we're going to find out if I'm right next year.
Next year, yeah, or maybe even earlier.
Like, I don't know.
When the next black swan arrives.
You already see people limiting token rates, right? You see Cursor doing that. You see with most things, there's a token limit, and that's for a reason, because this stuff's not free.
So I have so many more questions to ask you, but also I know that you have to go in a few minutes. So I have 15. So I think I just need to choose one of them, which is just quickly from your perspective, not like you're an insider in any way on this, but you're still an Apple user to a degree. So what do you make of Apple's approach to this whole AI conversation? Because they seem to be lagging a little. They produced that paper as well, which is almost like an LLM skeptic paper. Some people say that it's probably just maybe internally they are just lagging because their AI strategy so far was not really working with Siri, for example, which is not strictly speaking AI, right? But do you have an opinion on this?
I read something that I think mirrors my best guess of what's going on. Is I think Apple's very careful to release things. They don't release half-baked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they don't mind being a little later in the game if it's so wildly superior to some of the half-baked stuff being released out there. That would be the generous view, is that, because we just talked about non-determinism, hallucination, it's like there's a lot of stuff to understand around some of those. And some people are going, you're seeing, I'll pick on Grok, but it's had some pretty public fall downs because I think they were like, we just rather do it, right? And figure out later how to control it. And I don't feel like that's totally in the Apple ethos. Like they probably are like, we're going to sort of figure out how to do this super well and then release it. I don't know. I hope.
I mean, that's what happened with the iPhone, right? It's not like they had the first smartphone, not by a long shot, but they waited for the right moment. So, and I agree with you. I think that's their play. It was interesting for me to see, though, that, and I don't know how that happened or was it intentional, but they actually released some ads like a couple of months ago, or maybe it was even sometime last year. I don't know, but it was about basically a Gen AI solution integrated into the Apple ecosystem, where someone saw someone, I can't remember his name, like help me out, and then the system kind of went into the appointments and the emails, and his name is Jason, you met him at da-da-da. So the guy comes over as, hey Jason, how's everything, right? And then that was a demonstration of the new AI solution that will come with the next iOS, and it never landed, right? It never actually happened. So it's just interesting to see even Apple kind of, okay, how are we approaching this question? How are we going to deal with this? So, Jodi, this was a really cool conversation. I think we explored some very interesting areas and corners of the AI conversation where I think there's a lot of noise out there, but I always appreciate your tone and your octave. So maybe the next round of discussion will be next summer. We'll see. But this was a lot of fun, and we appreciate your insights as always.
Well, thank you for having me. The world changed wildly, even from last summer, right? So who knows what next summer will bring?
Well, we'll find out.
Sounds good. Thanks, Laza.